The laughter behind Lena Parker was not loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through the polished air of the charity gala. It was the kind of laughter people use when they think they are safe, when they believe the person they are talking about is too gentle, too trusting, too blind to ever turn around. The ballroom around her was glowing with warm gold light, all crystal glasses and expensive perfume. Soft jazz drifting beneath the hum of powerful people pretending they were not calculating each other's usefulness. Lena stood near one of the tall windows with a glass of champagne in her hand, smiling the way she had learned to smile after years of standing beside her husband in rooms where everyone believed his success had been inevitable. Across the room, Kevin Parker was speaking with two investors, his hand moving calmly as he explained something about expansion, projections, and strategic partnerships. He looked exactly the way people expected a man like him to look: confident, composed, handsome in a clean, well-managed way. The kind of man who never seemed to need anyone's approval because approval came to him naturally. Lena had once loved that confidence. She had once mistaken it for strength. She had once thought that his calm meant he could be trusted. Now, as she heard Anna Whitmore's voice behind her, smooth and amused, she understood that calm was sometimes just the most expensive costume a liar could wear. "His wife doesn't know anything," Anna said softly, the words slipping through a circle of women as though they were sharing something delicious. "She's sweet, honestly, almost sad, the kind of woman who never realizes she's being replaced." A few people laughed, not loudly, not cruelly enough to create a scene, just enough to agree, just enough to make the insult official. Lena did not turn around. She did not tighten her grip around the glass. She did not let her shoulders stiffen. She took a small sip of champagne and let the bubbles burn lightly against her tongue. The taste was dry, but the dryness that followed had nothing to do with wine. It came from somewhere deeper. It came from knowing that every word Anna had just said was supposed to humiliate her, and every person who laughed believed they were laughing at a woman who knew nothing. That was the first mistake they made. Lena did know. She had known for longer than any of them imagined. She had known long enough to stop crying about it, long enough to stop hoping it was only a mistake, long enough to understand that reacting too soon would only give Kevin time to erase the evidence, rewrite the story, move the money, and make her look unstable before she could make him look guilty. So she had learned to do what everyone had mistaken for weakness. She had learned to stay quiet. Across the room, Kevin looked at her and smiled, that public husband smile he had perfected over 11 years of marriage, the one that made women at parties say she was lucky, and men at board dinners say she had done well to marry someone with such vision. Lena smiled back. It cost her nothing now. That was the part no one understood. A woman still in pain struggles to pretend. A woman who has already accepted the truth can perform better than anyone. Lena did not discover Kevin's affair in one dramatic moment. There was no sudden message lighting up on his phone while he slept, no lipstick on a collar, no strange perfume clinging to his shirt like a confession. Real betrayal, she had learned, rarely arrives with theatrical evidence. It begins as small interruptions in reality. A phone turned over too quickly, a receipt that doesn't match a meeting, a laugh that stops the moment you walk into the room, a password changed for security reasons, a husband who becomes patient in a way that feels rehearsed. The first sign had been a notification. There and gone so fast, she almost convinced herself she had imagined. Just a name, honest, no last name, no message preview, only the faint reflection of Kevin's face as he picked up the phone and smiled before smoothing his expression into something neutral. Lena had been standing by the kitchen sink, washing berries in a silver colander, and the sight had stayed with her, not because of the name, but because of the smile. Kevin did not smile like that at business tech. He did not smile like that at clients. He used to smile like that at her in the early years, back when they lived in a one-bedroom apartment with a broken heater, back when she edited his pitch decks after midnight, and he would come behind her, kiss her shoulder, and say, "When this works, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." That had been years ago. The company had worked. The money had come. The house, the cars, the invitations, the carefully framed magazine profile, the foundation gala, the board seats, the charity dinners, the public image of Kevin and Lena Parker as a power couple built on loyalty and sacrifice. All of it had come. What had not come was the part where he made it up to her. Instead, he had slowly moved her into the background of the life she helped build, praising her in public, dismissing her in private, touching her waist at events, avoiding her eyes at home. At first she had blamed fatigue, then stress, then time, then herself. That was the cruel genius of men like Kevin. They didn't have to accuse you directly. They made you accuse yourself first. When she asked who Anna was, he glanced up from his phone with perfect calm. "A consultant," he said. "We're looking at a social strategy refresh." "At 11:30 at night?" Lena asked, keeping her tone light. Kevin's eyes held hers for a second too long. "Is there a time zone rule for business now?" He laughed softly, but the laugh didn't warm the room. "Come on, Lena. Don't do that, don't do that." As if she had already done something wrong. As if the question itself was the problem. She nodded, turned back to the sink, and let the water run cold over her fingers. That night, while Kevin slept easily beside her, she stared at the ceiling and hated herself for wondering if he was right. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe she was insecure. Maybe she had become one of those wives who searched for betrayal because she no longer knew how to ask for affection. By morning, she had convinced herself to let it go. By the following week, there were 3 more signs. The first receipt came from a restaurant Kevin claimed he had never visited. It was tucked into the side pocket of his briefcase, folded once, like something forgotten by accident. Dinner for 2, a bottle of wine. Lena knew he would never order for business because it was too intimate and too expensive to waste on clients. The date matched a night he had told her a meeting ran late because one of the investors had flown in from Chicago. She took a photo of it and put it back exactly where she found it. The second sign was a calendar entry hidden under an abbreviation. A.W. Consult. On an afternoon, he had told her he was in a financing call. The third was not a document at all, but a shift in his behavior. He began being kinder when he needed something and colder when she noticed too much. He brought home flowers one night, white roses wrapped in brown paper, and kissed her cheek in the kitchen as if he had suddenly remembered how to be tender. "You've seemed tired," he said. "I thought these might help." Lena looked at the roses and felt the old part of herself reach toward them before the new part stopped her. A man who never pretends to care is easy to hate. A man who betrays you while remembering your favorite flowers traps you in a much uglier place. He makes you wonder whether love and cruelty had always lived side by side inside him, and you had only chosen to see the prettier one. A month later, she saw Anna for the first time. It was at a private fundraising reception Kevin hosted for the company's new education initiative, and Anna stood near the bar in a cream dress, hair falling in loose waves, laughing with a man from Kevin's communications team. She was younger than Lena by almost 10 years. Not more beautiful exactly, but brighter in the way new things are bright before they have been handled too often. Kevin introduced her casually. "Anna Whitmore. She's been helping us refine the digital rollout." Anna smiled and took Lena's hand with both of hers. "I've heard so much about you," she said. The words were friendly. Her eyes were not. They traveled over Lena's face, her dress, her wedding ring, and settled for half a second too long on the small lines near her eye. Lena smiled. "I wish I could say the same." Anna's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Kevin's hand found Lena's lower back. Warm, possessive warning. Anyone watching would have seen a husband steadying his wife. Lena felt the pressure and understood the message. Behave. So she did. She behaved beautifully. She spoke kindly to Anna. She thanked her for her work. She even complimented her earrings. Later that night, Anna posted a photo from the reception. Kevin was blurred in the background, but his watch, his hand, and the edge of his suit sleeve were unmistakable. Caption read, "Some nights remind you why waiting is worth it." Lena saved the screenshot. Then she sat alone in her study and began a folder on her laptop. She named it Nothing Emotional. Not betrayal, not Kevin, not Anna. She called it Project. Once Lena stopped looking for comfort and started looking for structure, the picture formed quickly. Kevin and Anna had not stumbled into an affair. They had built one. Late meetings became hotel stays hidden as client dinner. Gifts became marketing expenses. A serviced apartment downtown was paid through a vendor Lena had never approved. Airline charges appeared around conferences Kevin attended alone. But the affair, painful as it was, became less important than the money. The money was where the real story lived. Lena had spent years stepping away from her own career to help Kevin's company survive its worst season. She had sold stock options from her previous job to cover payroll during the first cash flow crisis. She had introduced him to the first investor who took him seriously. She had edited contracts, rewritten investor letters, managed crisis communications, hosted dinners, soothed suppliers, charmed spouses, remembered birthdays, and turned Kevin's rough ambition into something that looked trustworthy. The early company had not been built by Kevin alone. It had been built on Lena's unpaid labor, Lena's network, Lena's credibility, Lena's silence. Now the financial records suggested he was preparing to remove her before she could claim what was hers. Transfers broken into small amounts, a holding company she had never heard of, draft agreements with signatures pending, debt arrangements that would leave certain liabilities dangerously close to their shared assets, while safer money moved out of reach. At first, she thought she was misreading. She called Maya Collins, her oldest friend and the only person Lena trusted enough to show the first documents. Maya was a corporate attorney who had left a brutal firm to start her own practice. She wore her hair short, spoke directly, and had never liked Kevin as much as she pretended to at dinners. When Lena placed the folder in front of her, Maya did not gasp. She did not rush to comfort. She read in silence, one document after another, her mouth becoming a flat line. Finally, she looked up. "Do you want me to speak as your friend or as your lawyer?" Lena's stomach tightened. "Both. As your friend, I want to tell you to leave tonight. As your lawyer, I'm telling you that if you leave tonight, he wins more than he deserves." Lena closed her eyes. Maya continued, gentler but firm. "He's not just cheating. He's preparing the battlefield before you know there's a war." "I know," Lena whispered. Maya leaned back. "No, you suspect. I know. And if we do this wrong, he'll make you look emotional, unstable, vindictive. Men like Kevin don't confess when cornered. They rearrange the room until everyone thinks the corner belongs to you." That sentence stayed with Lena. Men like Kevin rearrange the room. So from that day on, Lena stopped trying to escape the room. She started planning how to lock every door. The hardest part was pretending, not because Lena couldn't lie, but because she had spent most of her marriage being punished for even mild dishonesty, while Kevin treated his own lies as strategy. Now she had to become what he had been all along. Calm under pressure, warm at the right time, silent when silence served her. She began small. She stopped asking about late nights. She stopped looking at his phone when it buzzed. She answered his casual affection with softness. She asked about investor meetings. She brought him coffee before he asked. At first, Kevin watched her carefully, suspicious of any change he did not initiate. Then his suspicion faded into satisfaction. Control made him generous. The more she softened, the more he relaxed. The more he relaxed, the more careless he became. He left his laptop open, once while taking a call in the hallway. He forwarded financial files to an old email still synced on the tablet they once shared for travel planning. He spoke too freely in the car, forgetting that the dash system stored call logs. Each mistake went into project. Maya connected Lena with an investigator named Daniel Reed, a former compliance officer who had once worked with Kevin's company before resigning under circumstances Kevin described as a difference in values. Daniel laughed when he heard that. Kevin's values are whatever protects Kevin. He gave Lena names: vendors, former employees, a bookkeeper who had been pressured to classify personal spending as promotional, contractor paid through two entities for one job, a supplier who had nearly sued, but accepted a settlement after Kevin threatened to blacklist him. "He's charming," Daniel said during their first meeting in a parking garage, because he refused restaurants. "That's why people don't look closely until they've already been used." Lena looked at the flash drive he placed in her hand. "Will this destroy him?" Daniel's expression shifted. "It depends what you mean by destroy. Publicly, maybe. Legally, if tied correctly. Personally," he paused, "that part is usually done by the truth." At home, Kevin noticed nothing. Or rather, he noticed only what he wanted to see. A wife becoming gentle again. A household quieting. A marriage perhaps salvageable enough to use for optics, until the next phase of his life was ready. He even became nostalgic. One evening, while Lena chopped herbs at the kitchen island, he stood behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "I've missed this," he said into her hair. "Missed what?" she asked, keeping her voice even. "Us." Lena lowered the knife carefully. "Have you?" He turned her around, studied her face. "You don't believe me." "I didn't say that." "You don't have to." His tone held injury, but his eyes were measuring. "I know things have been hard. The company, the pressure, everything. But after this contract closes, I want us to take a trip. Just us." Lena looked at the man who was planning to leave her with debt, publicly praise her, privately betray her, and still use the word us as though it had not been hollowed out. She smiled faintly. "That sounds nice." He kissed her forehead. She let him. Later in the bathroom, she scrubbed the spot until her skin turned red. Anna, meanwhile, was losing patience. That was expected. Women like Anna did not see themselves as temporary. even when they entered a relationship built entirely on someone else's broken promises. She had believed Kevin when he said his marriage was dead. She had believed him when he said Lena was fragile, dependent, out of touch with the business. She had believed him when he said timing was the only obstacle. But timing, to a mistress waiting to become official, eventually starts to feel like humiliation. Her messages grew sharper. Maya and Daniel had recovered enough fragments from synced backups for Lena to see the pattern clearly. Anna wanted dates. Anna wanted guarantees. Anna wanted the apartment moved into her name. Anna wanted to be seen at events without pretending she was just a consultant. Anna wanted Kevin to tell his mother. Most of all, Anna wanted proof that she was not merely the woman he wanted in private, while Lena remained the woman he needed in public. Lena decided to give Anna proof of the wrong thing. An anonymous account sent Anna a cropped screenshot from one of Kevin's emails. Cannot proceed until Lena signs the transfer documents. Still need her cooperation. No context, no explanation. Just enough to sting. Anna reacted within hours. Kevin took the call on the balcony, but his voice rose before he could control it. Where did you get that? Silence. No, that is not what it means. Another pause. Because you don't understand how this works. Stop making everything about you. Lena sat in the living room, reading a book she had not turned a page in for 15 minutes, and listened to the rhythm of his frustration. That night, Kevin drank more than usual. The next morning, he was overly kind. He made Lena breakfast, which he had not done in years, and asked if she had slept well. She said yes. He looked relieved. The relief told her the pressure was working. A few days later, Lena arranged to cross paths with Anna at a luxury boutique. Where Anna often shopped using cards, Kevin routed through business accounts. Lena entered 15 minutes after Anna, wearing a simple navy dress and no visible anger. Anna saw her in the mirror and froze only for a second before smiling. Lena, Anna, Lena said, as if greeting an acquaintance from a committee. I didn't know you shopped here. I could say the same. Anna's smile sharpened. Kevin has generous taste. Lena glanced at the silk blouse in Anna's hand. He usually does when he's spending someone else's money. The sales associate pretended not to hear. Anna's face changed, not enough for anyone else to catch. Enough for Lena. I'm not sure what you mean. Of course you aren't. Lena stepped closer, lowering her voice. You think you're close. You think if you wait one more month, push one more time, cry at the right moment, he'll choose you in public the way he chooses you in hotel rooms. Anna's lips parted. Lena smiled almost kindly. But a man who needs his wife to sign papers before he can give you a future is not a man in love. He's a man moving assets. Anna's color drained. You don't know anything. That's what everyone keeps saying. Lena picked up a scarf, examined the tag, then set it down. Maybe you should ask yourself why that comforts you so much. She left before Anna could answer. That night, Anna sent Kevin 17 messages and called 6 times. By midnight, the first crack between them had become a fracture. Kevin began to unravel in ways only Lena could see. To everyone else, he remained polished. He still spoke smoothly in meetings, still sent confident updates to investors, still stood at charity functions with one hand in his pocket and the other ready for a handshake. At home, the mask thinned. He checked his phone constantly. He snapped at minor inconveniences, then apologized too quickly. He asked Lena questions with traps hidden under them. Have you talked to Maya recently? Did anyone from the company reach out to you? Why were you downtown yesterday? Each time, Lena answered with just enough truth to keep the lie invisible. Maya asked me to lunch. No one important. I had an appointment. She never over-explained. Over-explaining looks guilty. She had learned that from Kevin. One night, while she was reviewing documents in the study, he appeared in the doorway without warning. You've been in here a lot. Lena minimized the folder before turning. Work, you don't usually work this late. Neither do you. His mouth curved, but the smile was wrong. That sounded pointed. Did it? He came inside, stood behind her chair, and placed his hands on her shoulders. The pressure was light, possessive. Sometimes I feel like you're somewhere else. Lena forced herself to breathe evenly. Maybe I am. His fingers tightened almost imperceptibly. Where? She looked up at him. Inside my own head. He stared at her, trying to decide if that meant something. She let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable, then soften. I'm tired, Kevin. He relaxed. Tired was acceptable. Tired was manageable. Tired was not dangerous. Come to bed, he said. She did. She lay beside him in the dark while his arm rested across her waist. And for one terrifying second, grief rose so violently, she thought she might break open. Not because she wanted him, not anymore, but because she remembered wanting him. She remembered being 29, sitting on the floor of their old apartment with contracts spread around them, laughing because the ceiling leaked into a mixing bowl. She remembered the first investment check, the way he spun her around the kitchen and said, "We did it." We. That word hurt more than any insult Anna could have said, because once it had been true. Then Kevin shifted in his sleep, murmured something she couldn't understand, and the grief hardened again. The man beside her was not the man from the kitchen, or perhaps he had been that man, and this man all along, and she had only loved the one he showed her when he still needed her. The final piece arrived a week before the contract signing gala. Lena had almost decided to let the legal process do the work quietly. She had enough evidence to protect herself, enough to freeze assets, enough to force disclosures, enough, perhaps, to end the marriage without turning her life into public theater. She was tired, more tired than she had admitted even to Maya. Revenge requires fuel, and anger burns fast. What remains afterward is discipline, and discipline is exhausting. Then she heard Kevin in the study. The door was not fully closed. He was speaking to someone, not Anna, not an investor, but his own attorney. Lena recognized the tone immediately. Calm, strategic, cold. "If she resists the documents, we'll frame it as emotional instability," Kevin said. A pause. "No, she doesn't have the sophistication to understand the structure. She'll panic if we pressure her correctly." Lena stood very still in the hallway. Maya Collins could be a problem if she gets involved, but there may be ways to imply Lena's leaning on her because she's not mentally steady. Another pause. Then Kevin laughed softly. "She won't have proof. She's not that kind of woman." Lena's hand touched the wall, not for balance, but because something inside her had gone perfectly still. She's not that kind of woman. That was the last thing Kevin was ever going to be wrong about. By morning, Lena had chosen the stage. Kevin's company was hosting a contract signing event for its largest partnership yet. A room filled with investors, board members, senior staff, key clients, press contacts, and the kind of people whose private opinions could kill a reputation faster than public scandal. Kevin needed that night to prove stability. He needed the market to see him as trustworthy. He needed his marriage beside him, like a seal of character. Lena offered to attend before he could ask. "I should be there," she said over breakfast, stirring cream into her coffee. Kevin looked up too quickly. "You want to come?" "Of course," she smiled gently. "It matters to you." Suspicion flickered, then softened into relief. "It does. Then I'll be there." He reached across the table and touched her hand. "Thank you." Lena did not pull away. She thought of Anna laughing behind her. She thought of Kevin's attorney. She thought of the line, "She's not that kind of woman." Then she squeezed his hand once lightly and smiled like a wife. The days before the gala moved with strange calm. Lena organized everything in layers. Not chaos, not rage, a sequence. People collapse most completely when they are not allowed time to recover between truths. First the affair, undeniable but personal. Then Anna's contempt, ugly but emotional. Then the money, cold and documented. Then Kevin's own voice, because nothing destroys a charming liar like being forced to compete against himself. Maya reviewed the timing. Daniel verified the files. A production technician, hired through a third-party confirmed access to the event screen. Security was arranged quietly, not enough to make the room feel guarded, enough to make sure Kevin couldn't physically stop the presentation once it began. "You know this will change everything," Maya said the night before, sitting across from Lena in the kitchen. The house was silent. Kevin had gone to a late strategy dinner, which Lena knew meant a fight with Anna followed by drinks alone. Lena looked at the folder between them. "Everything already changed?" Maya studied her. "Not like this," Lena nodded. "I know. Are you doing it because it protects you or because it hurts him?" Lena considered lying. Instead, she said, "Both." Maya did not judge her. That was why Lena loved her. "Then make sure you can live with both." After Maya left, Lena walked through the house slowly. The hallway with their wedding photos. The dining room where she hosted investors while pretending not to hear Kevin dismiss her ideas as Lena's instincts. The guest room where Anna had once left a scarf during a team planning retreat at their lake house, though Lena had not understood its meaning then. The bedroom where Kevin slept beside her like trust was his right. She stopped in front of the mirror and looked at herself for a long time. She did not look victorious. She looked older, sharper, more awake. That was enough. The next evening, she wore a deep emerald dress Kevin had always liked, not because she wanted to please him, but because she wanted him to recognize what he was losing in real time. Her hair was swept back. Her makeup was soft but precise. When Kevin saw her at the foot of the stairs, he paused. "You look beautiful." Lena picked up her clutch. "I know," it was a small answer. It unsettled him more than anger would have. The gala was held in a glass-walled event hall overlooking the river, the skyline shining beyond it like a promise rich people kept making to themselves. Everything was immaculate. White flowers, black linens, branded backdrops, a small stage with an enormous screen behind it. Waiters moved silently with trays of champagne. Investors shook hands with practiced enthusiasm. Board members smiled in clusters. Press guests pretended they weren't hoping for something quotable. Kevin moved through the room as if he owned the air. Lena watched him from beside a tall arrangement of orchids, accepting greetings, smiling when people told her how proud she must be. "He's extraordinary," one woman said. "Men like Kevin don't come along often." "No," Lena said, "they don't." Anna arrived 20 minutes late. She wore ivory, which felt intentional and desperate at the same time. Her eyes found Kevin first, then Lena. For a second, the old smugness appeared, the one Lena had heard in her voice at the charity gala, but it wavered now. Anna was nervous. Good. Nervous people improvise. Improvising people expose themselves. Kevin saw Anna too, and nearly missed a word in the conversation he was having with a board member. Lena watched him recover. That tiny stumble gave her more satisfaction than it should have. The evening began exactly as expected. Kevin spoke first, thanking partners, praising teamwork, invoking resilience and integrity with the ease of a man who had spent years using moral language as decoration. Then he turned toward Lena. "And of course," he said, his voice softening, "none of this would have been possible without the woman who believed in me before anyone else did." The room applauded. Lena walked onto the stage. Kevin leaned toward her as she approached and whispered, "Thank you for this." She looked at him. "You're welcome." He thought it was forgiveness. That was the beauty of it. The microphone felt cool in her hand. For a moment she saw the room as it saw her. The loyal wife, elegant, composed, standing beside the man she helped build. Then she began. She spoke about the early years, the rented office with bad lighting, the nights they ate takeout over spreadsheets, the first investor dinner she hosted with mismatched plates because they couldn't afford catering, the sacrifices that never appeared in company profiles, the faith required to stand beside someone before the world decided. He mattered. People softened. Some smiled. Kevin's shoulders lowered. He believed he had won the moment back. Then Lena paused. "Not long, just enough. For a long time," she said. "I thought betrayal began with another woman." The room quieted. Kevin turned toward her slowly. Anna went still. Lena looked at the audience, then at the man beside her. "But I was wrong. Betrayal begins earlier. It begins when someone looks at your trust and sees cover. When he looks at your loyalty and sees a tool. When he looks at your love and sees something he can spend." The screen behind her lit up. The first image was simple. Kevin and Anna leaving a hotel together. Not blurry, not suggestive, clear enough for silence to replace every polite sound in the room. Then came messages. Not all of them, only the right ones. Anna calling Lena pathetic. Kevin promising timing. Anna demanding a future. Kevin saying he needed Lena calm until the papers were signed. A murmur passed through the room. Kevin stepped forward. "Lena," she did not look at him. "I'm not finished." His public smile tried to return and failed. Anna stood near the back, one hand at her throat, eyes darting as if an exit could save her from being recognized. The next audio file played. Anna's voice filled the room, sweet and mocking. "She's so trusting it's embarrassing. Does she even know she's being replaced?" A few people turned toward Anna. She looked at Kevin, furious and terrified. Kevin's jaw hardened. "Turn that off," he said, low and sharp. The technician did not move. Lena continued, her voice even. "If this were only an affair, it would be painful, humiliating, ordinary in the saddest way." The screen changed. Spreadsheets, transfers, vendor invoices, a lease, holding company documents, draft agreements, debt structures, enough for the laypeople to understand something was wrong. And more than enough for the money people in the room to understand exactly how wrong. Lena heard a man in the front row whisper, "Jesus." Kevin's CFO stood halfway, then sat down again as though his knees had lost their purpose. A board member pulled out his phone. One investor leaned toward his attorney. The room had crossed from scandal into risk. That was where Kevin truly began to die. Affairs could be forgiven by people who did not have to live inside them. Financial deception was different. Financial deception threatened everyone. Then came Kevin's voice. "Let her sign it. The debt will keep her in place." The sentence entered the room like a blade. No one spoke after that, not even Anna. Lena turned to Kevin. His face had gone pale beneath the lights. Sweat shone near his temple. "You built a company on the image of integrity," she said. "But behind closed doors, you were building a way to trap the person who helped you survive long enough to become impressive." Kevin moved toward the microphone. Security stepped in. He stopped, not because he wanted to, but because he realized the room was watching how he reacted. That was the trap inside the trap. If he shouted, he confirmed the ugliness. If he stayed silent, the evidence spoke. Lena looked past him to the audience. "The full records have already been sent to my attorney, the board, the investors who needed to see them, and the appropriate authorities. Divorce papers have been filed, asset freezes are in motion, and I will no longer carry the shame of a man who mistook silence for stupidity." Then she turned toward Anna. "As for you, I hope being chosen in secret was worth being exposed in public." Anna opened her mouth, but Kevin turned on her first. "Shut up," he snapped, pure contempt tearing through the last of his charm. That was the moment the room fully turned. Not at the affair, not even at the money, at the sight of the real Kevin Parker, no longer polished, no longer controlled. Looking at the woman he had risked everything for with the same cruelty he had used on the wife he thought he owned. Lena placed the microphone on the stand. "Your biggest mistake," she said quietly, "was thinking I didn't know." Then she walked off the stage. No one applauded. Applause would have made it entertainment. Silence made it judgment. As Lena crossed the room, people stepped aside. Not dramatically, not with cheering support, but with a kind of stunned respect that felt heavier than praise. Behind her, Kevin was speaking now. Too quickly, too loudly, trying to explain, trying to separate personal matters from business concerns, trying to turn evidence into misunderstanding. But every word sounded smaller than the last. One investor left without shaking his hand. Then another. A board member made a call near the exit. The CFO looked sick. Anna tried to follow Kevin, then stopped when she realized every camera in the room seemed pointed at someone near her. Lena did not look back until she reached the lobby. Through the glass doors, she saw the room beginning to empty, not in panic, but in calculation. That was worse for Kevin. Panic passes, calculation stays. Outside, rain had begun. Fine at first, then heavier, turning the pavement black and glossy. Lena stood beneath the overhang, breathing air that smelled like wet concrete and city exhaust, and waited for the feeling she thought might come. Relief, satisfaction, triumph, anything. It didn't arrive. Instead, there was emptiness, wide and cold, opening inside her where months of discipline had been. Revenge, she realized, is often imagined as fire, but when it is done properly, it leaves ash. Kevin came out minutes later. His hair was damp, his tie loose, his face stripped of all public grace. "Lena," he said. She did not answer. "You don't understand what you've done." That almost made her smile. "I understand exactly what I've done. You ruined me." "No," she said. "I let them see you." His mouth worked, searching for the sentence that would bring her back into the old pattern, the one where his voice shaped the room. "I made mistakes. You made plans. I was under pressure. So was I. Anna meant nothing." Lena looked at him then, really looked. "That may be the ugliest thing you've said tonight." He flinched, not because he cared about Anna, but because he recognized too late that every excuse made him worse. The rain thickened behind him. "When did you start preparing?" he asked, voice rough. "When you thought I knew nothing." The answer landed between them with more finality than shouting ever could. Kevin laughed once, dry and broken. "I thought I was ahead of you." "You were," Lena said, "for years. That's why I stopped chasing you and started waiting." He stared at her as though seeing her for the first time, not as wife, not as support, not as background, but as a person he had underestimated long enough to hand her the knife. "Did you ever think about forgiving me?" he asked. It was not a negotiation this time. It was smaller than that, a last search for a door. Lena stood beneath the cold light of the awning and gave him the only honest answer left. "Before I knew the truth, maybe. After I knew the plan, no." His eyes reddened. "I loved you." "No," she said, and her voice was softer than anger. "You loved what I made possible." Then she stepped into the rain and left him standing there. The aftermath did not explode the way people on the outside might have expected. There were no weeks of public screaming, no dramatic interviews, no endless social media war. It happened in the quieter, more lethal language of power. Calls went unanswered. Meetings were postponed indefinitely. A key investor requested a review. A partner withdrew pending clarification. The board convened without Kevin. The CFO retained counsel. Vendors began protecting themselves. Employees who had once laughed too loudly at Kevin's jokes suddenly remembered things they had ignored. Anna disappeared from the apartment within 3 days, not because she was ashamed, Lena suspected, but because the money stopped moving and the future she had been waiting for had turned radioactive. She sent Kevin a stream of messages accusing him of using her, lying to her, dragging her into his mess. Some of those messages reached Lena through Daniel. She read them once, not because she needed to, but because there is a strange finality in seeing two people who built their intimacy on betrayal begin accusing each other of dishonesty. Kevin tried to contact Lena constantly for the first week. Calls, emails, messages through mutual acquaintances. Then, when his attorney advised him to stop, he began appearing in places she might see him. Outside Maya's office, across from her gym, near the cafe where she once spent Sunday morning. He never came too close. Men who have lost the right to approach sometimes hover, hoping distance will be mistaken for respect. Lena saw him each time. She did not go to him. She did not hide. She let him stand in the outer edges of a life he no longer had access to. One afternoon, nearly a month after the gala, he waited outside her office building. No rain this time, no dramatic lighting, just an ordinary day, which made him look even more out of place. He was thinner, his suit was expensive but badly worn, as though the man inside it no longer knew how to carry it. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said quickly when she stopped. Lena said nothing. "I just wanted to say, I understand now." She almost turned away, but something in his voice stopped her. Not hope, not pity, only the recognition that this might be the closest he would ever come to truth. "I didn't lose everything because of you," Kevin said. "I lost because I thought I couldn't lose." Lena held his gaze. Months earlier, she might have wanted that sentence desperately. She might have believed it could heal something. Now it only confirmed what was already finished. "You should keep understanding that," she said. "Somewhere else," he nodded. For once, he did not argue. For once, he did not reach for her. For once, he was the one who turned away first. Lena watched him leave, not with satisfaction, but with a quiet acknowledgement that something had shifted. Not forgiveness, not peace, but distance. Sometimes distance is the first mercy you give yourself. The divorce moved faster than Kevin expected and slower than Lena wanted. Legal endings are always uglier than emotional ones because they require signatures where there used to be memories. Every asset had to be named, every liability examined, every hidden transfer dragged into daylight. Kevin's attorneys tried to soften the language. Maya did not let them. Daniel's evidence created pressure Kevin could not afford to fight publicly. The board removed him before the final hearing. He resigned to protect the company. A phrase so clean it almost made Lena laugh when she read it in the press release. Anna was never named publicly beyond whispers, but whispers were enough in the circles she wanted access to. She had wanted to be seen. She was, just not the way she imagined. The day Lena signed the final papers, the sky was clear, almost offensively beautiful. She sat across from Kevin in a conference room with glass walls and a view of downtown. He looked older, but not old enough to be forgiven by time. When the last page was placed before her, Lena signed her name steadily. Kevin watched her hand move. "Is this what you wanted?" he asked. Lena looked at the ink drying on the paper. No, something like hope flickered in his eyes, foolish and immediate. She closed the folder. "What I wanted was for you to be the man I thought I married. This is just what was left." The hope died. Good hope in the wrong person can become another attempt to take. That evening, Lena returned to the house one last time. The rooms were mostly empty now, stripped of the staged warmth that had made it look like a home. She walked through them slowly. The kitchen, where she had pretended not to notice his lies. The study, where she found the structure of his betrayal. The bedroom, where she had learned that sharing a bed can be lonelier than sleeping alone. In the closet, she found the emerald dress from the gala hanging in a garment bag. For a moment, she touched the fabric. Then she left it there. She did not need the costume anymore. In the drawer beside the bed, she found her wedding ring. She had removed it weeks earlier, but had not decided what to do with it. Now she held it in her palm, surprised by how small it looked. A circle of metal, once a promise, then a performance, finally evidence of how long she had stayed. She did not throw it dramatically into water or crush it beneath her heel. She placed it on the empty dresser and walked away. Some things do not deserve ceremony. At the front door, she turned off the last light. The click sounded soft. Final. Outside, the evening was cool. Maya waited by the car, arms folded, pretending not to be emotional. "You okay?" she asked. Lena looked back at the dark windows. "Not yet," Maya nodded. "That's more honest." Lena smiled faintly, the first real smile in longer than she could remember. "I'm learning." They drove away without looking back. Months passed, and life did not become beautiful all at once. Lena disliked stories that made survival look cinematic. There were mornings she woke with her heart racing because a dream had returned her to the gala, the screen lighting up behind her, the room inhaling, Kevin saying her name like a warning. There were afternoons when she caught the scent of white roses in a grocery store and had to stand still until the nausea passed. There were evenings when silence in her apartment felt peaceful, and other evenings when it felt like proof of everything she had lost. But slowly, the silence stopped frightening her. Slowly, she learned its shape. She moved into a smaller apartment with tall windows and a view of a park where children played in the late afternoon. She bought her own flowers every Friday, never white roses, always something bright and temporary. She returned to consulting under her own name. The first time a client said, "We asked for you because we heard you're the best," she had to blink hard and look away. For years, she had been Kevin Parker's wife, the woman behind him, the quiet strength in his story. Now her name stood alone again, and it felt unfamiliar, then heavy, then good. One Saturday morning, nearly a year after the gala, Lena saw Kevin across the street outside a small coffee shop. He was speaking to a man who looked impatient, holding a folder under one arm. His hair had more gray at the temples, his shoulders bent slightly inward. There was no aura around him now. No orbit of people wanting something, no polished ease. Just a man trying to negotiate with a world that no longer made room for him automatically. Then he looked up. Their eyes met through traffic. Lena felt something move in her chest. Not love, not pain, not even anger. Recognition, perhaps. He had been real. What he did had been real. What she lost had been real. And still here she was. The light changed. Cars began moving. Kevin took one step. Not forward exactly, just enough to suggest he might try. Lena turned away first. On the passenger seat beside her was a bouquet of yellow tulips she had bought for herself. She touched one petal gently, then drove on. That night, Lena opened the windows in her apartment and let the city noise rise into the room. She thought about winning, a word other people kept trying to give her. Meyer had said it once, months ago, then apologized immediately because she saw Lena's face. The press had implied it in a profile about the company's restructuring. Former acquaintances had said it at lunches. They suddenly wanted to schedule. You won, you got out, you took him down. But winning was not the right word. Winning suggested a game she had chosen to play. Winning suggested a trophy, a clean score, a finish line where pain politely stops. What Lena had done was survive a system designed by someone who knew exactly where she was soft. She had survived love being turned into leverage. She had survived loyalty being treated as stupidity. She had survived waking up one day and realizing the person she trusted most had studied her not to understand her, but to use her more effectively. That kind of survival does not feel like victory at first. It feels like standing in the ruins with your own name still in your mouth. But maybe she thought that was enough. Maybe the satisfying ending was not Kevin destroyed, or honor exposed, or the company taken from him, though all of those things had happened. Maybe the satisfying ending was quieter. Maybe it was this: a woman alone in her own apartment, breathing without fear of footsteps in the hall, owning the silence around her, no longer waiting for someone to come home and decide what version of reality she would be allowed to live in. Lena poured herself tea, sat by the window, and watched the city lights shimmer in the glass. The woman she had been before Kevin's betrayal would never fully return. That was true, but for the first time, that truth did not feel only like loss. It felt like space. Space for someone wiser. Harder, yes. Less innocent, yes. But also freer. The old Lena had loved a man enough to help him build a life. The new Lena would never again build herself into someone else's foundation. She lifted the cup to her lips and smiled. Not with triumph, not with bitterness, but with the small, steady satisfaction of a person who had finally stopped apologizing for surviving. Kevin had lost the empire he tried to protect. Anna had lost the future she tried to steal. And Lena had lost the illusion that love alone could make someone worth. But she had kept the one thing they both thought she would surrender without noticing: herself. And this time, she was not giving that away again. There was one more part of the story Lena did not tell anyone for a long time. Not Maya, not Daniel. Not even the therapist she eventually saw on Thursday afternoons in a quiet office that smelled faintly of cedar and mint tea. It was not because she was ashamed, exactly. Shame had belonged to the old life, the one where Kevin's choices somehow became evidence of her failure. This was different. This was the part that felt too private to hand over too quickly. The part that proved that leaving a lie does not immediately teach you how to live inside the truth. For months after the divorce, Lena kept waking at 3:17 in the morning. Not 3, not 3:30, always 3:17. She would open her eyes in the dark with the certain, physical feeling that she had forgotten something urgent. Some document unsigned, some piece of evidence misplaced, some door left unlocked, some version of Kevin standing just outside the room with a calm explanation ready. Her apartment would be silent, her phone would be on the nightstand, the city would glow faintly beyond the windows. Nothing was wrong, and still her body did not believe it. Her body had lived too long in a house, where peace was only the pause before the next performance. It took time to convince herself that silence was not a trap. Some nights she got up and walked barefoot through the apartment, touching ordinary things as though confirming she had survived into a physical world. The back of the chair, the kitchen counter, the cool edge of the sink, the vase of tulips she bought every Friday because she had decided beauty should never again arrive as an apology fro. A guilty man. One night, unable to sleep, she opened the old project folder one final time. She had meant to delete it months earlier, but couldn't. Not because she wanted to keep the pain, but because the folder had become proof that she had not imagined anything. Proof that she had not been unstable. Proof that the instincts Kevin trained her to doubt had been right. She scrolled through the files slowly. Receipts, messages, transfers, call logs, photos, the recording from his study, Anna's insults, Kevin's cold instructions. Every piece of the machine that had once been invisible around her. Then she closed the folder, copied it to an encrypted drive for legal storage, and removed it from her computer. The screen went blank. For several minutes she just sat there, hands resting on the desk. She expected grief. Instead, something quieter came. Not forgiveness, not closure, release. There is a difference. Closure suggests that the wound agrees to become neat. Release means you stop reopening it to prove it happened. The world tried to simplify Lena afterward. That was one of the things she found almost funny. In a bitter way, people who had barely spoken to her before suddenly wanted to understand her. They wanted the story with clean edges. They wanted to know when she first suspected, how she got the evidence, whether Kevin cried, whether Anna begged, whether Lena felt powerful when the screen lit up. They wanted the room, the gasp, the humiliation. They wanted the satisfying pieces, because those were easier to digest than the truth. The truth was that the most important moments had not happened on stage. They had happened at the kitchen sink when she saw him smile at a phone and convinced herself not to overreact. They had happened at midnight beside a sleeping husband, while she wondered if loneliness had made her suspicious. They had happened in the study while she minimized a folder as Kevin stood behind her, hands on her shoulders, pretending concern while testing control. They had happened in the slow education of realizing that love can be used as a blindfold by someone who knows exactly how much you want to trust him. But that version was too complicated for people who preferred victory. So Lena learned to answer briefly. I'm doing well. The legal process is finished. I'm focused on work. Thank you for asking. Polite sentences became fences. She had spent years with a man who treated her boundaries as obstacles to work around. Now she built them carefully and kept them standing. Maya teased her once, gently, that she had become terrifyingly elegant at ending conversation. Lena laughed. It was true. She no longer explained herself to people who had already decided which version of her they liked best. Work became the first place where the new Lena felt useful without feeling used. At first, she accepted smaller clients, independent businesses, founders who reminded her of the earliest version of Kevin before ambition turned predatory. Though she was careful not to romanticize hunger anymore. Hunger could build things, yes, but it could also eat anything nearby if no one taught it limits. She rebuilt her consultancy under the name Lena Parker Strategic, though for a week she considered dropping Parker entirely. In the end, she kept it, not for Kevin, but because she had earned that name in the years she carried. He did not get to make even her signature feel contaminated. Her first major client after the divorce was a woman named Grace Miller, founder of a clean energy startup, who arrived at their first meeting with messy notes, sharp instincts, and the exhausted honesty of someone trying to grow without becoming a monster. Grace looked around Lena's office and said, "I heard you're good at seeing what other people miss." Lena paused because the sentence touched something tender. Then she smiled. "I've had practice." Over the next months, the work became more than income. It became reclamation. Every presentation she shaped under her own name felt like recovering a room in her mind that Kevin had once occupied. Every invoice paid directly to her company felt like a quiet correction. Every client who listened, when she spoke, reminded her that she had never been merely the woman behind someone else's success. She had been the architecture all along. Kevin had simply stood in front of it and called himself the building. Kevin's fall continued, but it became less interesting to Lena the longer she lived outside. At first, she received updates constantly. The partnership dissolved. The board investigation widened. 2 executives resigned. A vendor sued. Kevin sold the lake house. Anna resurfaced in another city, attached to a real estate developer whose wife had not yet learned her name. People sent Lena links, screenshots, gossip disguised as concern. For a while she opened them, then one day she didn't. That was the day she realized the real opposite of love was not hatred. Hatred still checks. Hatred still wants proof. Hatred still circles the old house hoping to see smoke. Indifference, real indifference, is when someone brings you news that once would have shaken your hands, and you forget to ask what happened next. The last update that reached her came through Daniel, who called to ask if she wanted a copy of the final compliance report for her records. "Do I need it?" she asked. "Legally, no. Emotionally, I can't answer that." Lena looked out the window of her office, where late afternoon light was turning the buildings amber. "Then no," she said. Daniel was quiet for a second. "That's probably healthy. Don't sound so surprised," he laughed. "After what I've seen, healthy is rare." She ended the call smiling faintly. Rare, maybe, but not impossible. Maya remained the one person who could still reach the places Lena kept guarded from everyone else. On the anniversary of the gala, Maya showed up at Lena's apartment with Thai food, a bottle of red wine, and a refusal to call it an anniversary. "We are not commemorating trauma," she announced, walking past Lena into the kitchen. "We are eating noodles and insulting men in moderation." Lena laughed harder than she expected. They sat on the floor because the coffee table was covered with client notes, and for a while they talked about ordinary things. Maya's impossible paralegal, Grace's chaotic investor deck, the upstairs neighbor who vacuumed at midnight. Then the conversation softened. Maya looked at her over the rim of her wineglass. "Do you ever miss him?" Lena leaned back against the sofa. A year earlier, she might have lied out of pride. Now she knew pride was often just fear dressed better. "I miss who I thought he was," she said. "Sometimes I miss who I was when I believed in him. That version of me was softer." Maya nodded. "Softer isn't always better." "No," Lena said, "but it was easier." Maya set the glass down. "Are you happy?" Lena looked toward the window. The city beyond it shimmered, indifferent and alive. "Not all the time." "Good. That would be suspicious." Lena smiled. "But I'm not afraid all the time either." Maya's expression changed, small and warm. "That sounds like a beginning." Lena thought about that after Maya left. Not a victory, not a rebirth, a beginning. Maybe beginnings did not always feel bright. Maybe sometimes they felt like learning the layout of a room after years in the dark. The satisfying part did come eventually, but it did not arrive as revenge. It arrived on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon, in a conference room that smelled of dry erase markers and coffee, while Lena stood at the front of a table presenting a strategy she had built from scratch. Around her sat executives, investors, engineers, people who had no connection to Kevin, no memory of her as his wife, no interest in her pain. They listened because her work was good. They challenged her because they respected her enough to take her seriously. And when the meeting ended, Grace Miller shook her hand and said, "I don't know how we would have done this without you." The sentence was close enough to something. Kevin used to say that for 1 second Lena braced for the old ache. But it didn't come. Instead, she felt grounded, present, paid, seen, not needed as a sacrifice, valued as a person. Driving home that evening, she passed a florist and stopped for tulips. Yellow again, ridiculous and cheerful. The woman at the counter asked if they were for someone special. Lena looked at the flowers and smiled. "Yes," she said. "Me, it should have been a small thing." It was. It was also everything. Months later, when Lena saw Kevin outside the coffee shop, the moment did not break her because she had already learned to belong to herself. He looked like a man who had survived consequences, but not grown from them as much as he wanted people to believe. His eyes still searched her face for a version of Lena that might soften, might ask how he was, might offer him one last emotional shelter. She gave him nothing cruel. She gave him nothing warm. She gave him the dignity of being irrelevant. That was the final thing he had never expected from her. Not rage, not revenge, not pleading. Absence. The light changed, and she drove away with flowers beside her. and the small satisfaction that rose in her chest was not sharp enough to be called joy. But it was real. It was the feeling of choosing herself without needing an audience. It was the feeling of no longer needing Kevin ruined in order for her life to feel possible. He had already lost what he built on lies. Anna had already lost the fantasy she mistook for love. Lena had lost the illusion that goodness protected people from being used. But she had gained something harder, cleaner, and finally hers. The knowledge that she could be betrayed and still not become bitter enough to disappear into it. That she could be underestimated and still not spend the rest of her life proving herself to fools. That she could walk away from the wreckage carrying not triumph, not innocence, but power, quiet power, earned power, the kind no one gives, and therefore no one can take back.